Circling back now to our coverage of the United States midterm elections, joining me live from New Haven, Connecticut is Mary Curtis, a columnist with the political publication Roll Call and host of the podcast Equal Time. Welcome back to the program, Mary.
Good to be here.
So before we get started on the issue of education, the midterms, the meat of our interview, I wanted to first get your reaction to the attack on the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Does an incident like this, so close to elections, have any major bearing?
We really have to see the details. This is one of those issues you don't want to jump in before we just know what's going on. The only thing we can say now is that we hope that he's on the road to recovery. And I think anybody of any political stripe would say that.
All right. Well, then let's move on now to, what we've been really trying to get at, which is the issue of education. Because one of the big debates brewing in the U.S. is whether public schools push a liberal agenda. Are schools becoming too liberal, or are they basically educating?
Well, we saw so much turmoil and anxiety over the schools. It really happened a lot during COVID, the lockdowns, the mask mandates. And it became really a political issue. And then it turned to when parents were home, were they paying more attention to what was being taught? Although I would say as a parent, you should always be paying attention. And there were charges, particularly among some white parents, I would say, that perhaps there was, they said it was critical race theory, which isn't taught except in the higher level colleges and so forth. But it was more about shorthand for teaching the truth about the racial history of this country, and also about gender issues. And it really played also into book bans. And it became quite political. And we saw the school boards folks showing up, and school boards elections and meetings becoming very contentious. And I would say that some people would say it was liberal, but at the same time, parents of color, for the most part, are really being left out of some of this debate, and they want their kids to learn the truth of American history. So it's become another political flashpoint at a time where teachers also feel under siege and there's a shortage of teachers.
Well, of course, some take the position that what's happening is not education, but indoctrination, as we heard in the report just earlier. Issues such as Black Lives Matter, as you brought up critical race theory. How valid is that argument? Is this indoctrination, and how young should it start?
Well, actually, critical race theory, as I said, was not taught in elementary and high schools. It's become a blanket statement for anything that doesn't teach a certain view of American history. And, some people might say indoctrination is just teaching truth. Obviously, when I was in school, you didn't learn about some historical figures and certain times in our history where the United States really was not a place of equal justice. And so some would say it's just teaching the truth of what has happened. And when you come to gender issues, are we speaking to children in schools that are dealing with some of these issues themselves? And so that is really the big debate. And some would say, obviously, schools have never stopped teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, and these other things. It's more over how they teach history and interpret history. And are they putting the experiences of all children in schools? And as I said, we've also seen this with folks wanting to ban certain books that have different experiences. Sometimes books about, Ruby Bridges integrating New Orleans school systems when she was 6 years old and meeting violence. And some would say she was 6 years old and had to go through it. So when should our children have to learn about it? So I think this is an issue that's not going away because it has worked. Glenn Youngkin, you could say, helped him become the governor of the Republican governor of Virginia.
Right.
So we're going to see it more.
Really fascinating. Mary Curtis, real pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much. She's a columnist at Roll Call.